Okay, welcome to part 3 of building the Pythagorean theorem model. So we've got our model here. Everything's good. We've checked everything. It works. It's all dry. And so now we're going to be putting on the bracing, which is, in my opinion, the least fun and hardest step sometimes, So we're double siding all of our braces. So we've got 2 of the shorter ones for on here, 2 of the longer ones for on here, and then this bottom piece slides into the brace on the table. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to double side these up, so glue them together. And since these pieces are so small, technically it is wood on wood, so wood glue would be better. But a lot of the times the wood glue doesn't pour out quite right, so it's much easier to just sacrifice a little bit and just put on, glue all or just regular Elmer's glue onto these pieces. Because it makes less of a mess in the long run. So, very similar to how we were working with in the first step, just little tiny lines. We really don't need a whole lot. And it's honestly not that integral that these stay together completely perfectly. Really, all this is serving as an extra layer of protection for the actual frame and making sure that, the acrylic connects, nicely to the wood of the actual model. So it's not super important, but it is very important that we do get this very flush, because we don't want to have too much off on these pieces. And make sure you're gluing laser burns to laser burns so it looks nicer overall. So it hides those marks made by the laser. And yeah, just slap them together nice and easy. Apply some tension to everything and just kind of wipe away the excess glue. It's about good. That's all we really need to do for these pieces. We'll let them dry for just a second. And let's take this piece. We're going to slap them together. I don't do laser side to laser side. At least I won't do it with this one because there's a bunch of markings on this piece, and I think they look a little bit visually worse than just the laser side themselves. So for this part, we will be using our wood glue this time, just because we have a lot more surface area to work with. And make sure you open your materials before you start recording. So just make a few lines. That's all you really need. And then you can do a nice little spread pattern that you might recognize from our blocks, in which slap it on and then wiggle it around to get it into covering more surface area. And so we'll just want to push this down a good bit. Get it all nice and sticky. You might notice that sometimes it's like kind of warped a little bit as far as, you know, when I push down. Here you go. Sorry. That's why we have Pythagorean. So sometimes when you kind of push down, you'll see that there's a little bit of flex in the wood. And so we just want to push down long enough that it bonds those pieces together. And if you have a little bit of a gap, it's not a big deal. It's just a little visual look. Gives it character. But yeah, so now usually I wait a little bit for the glue to dry, but that's not really necessary all the time. So we can move on to kind of laying everything inside. I like to do the bottom piece last. Just because once we get it set inside that bottom piece, we're gonna need it to not move for a little bit while it dries. So notice for these parts, we are doing two types of gluing. We have wood on wood glue on this side, and then on this side, we have acrylic on wood. So we're gonna use two types of glue to get it to stick better. The first, we're gonna use, of course, wood glue for the wood on wood. And then for the wood on acrylic, we're gonna use this E6000 flexible kind of all-purpose glue. It's kind of a middle ground between something like the wood glue and the really strong liquid glue that we used when putting the acrylic plate onto our model in part 2. And so this is nice because it's really goopy. So you can kind of really kind of glob this on and get it all in there, I guess. So we'll just squeeze out a chunk, or at least try to. Here I am rolling up the glue, trying to get it to come out. Okay, and I finally got to start coming out. So then we'll just kind of lay it in like a thin layer right along this kind of top edge. And this dries fairly slowly, I've noticed. So it'll kind of be a while. So what you can do is you can kind of put some glue on both pieces. Let's do a little bit of a line on the top piece, and then kind of where the acrylic is on the opposite side, just a little dabble there. And that is good enough for our needs. We'll use this again just a little bit. And then on the other side, we're gonna want to dabble some of, my favorite, the wood glue. So we're gonna do this on the opposite side, just like how we did it on the acrylic. We really don't need a lot here. That is perfectly all right. Whereas quantity, do a little bit more on this side. And then same thing on this side. So this is just to get everything set up for us. And then we can start putting these on. So I like to kind of slide it over the piece. And this one is a bit difficult because I did not line things up perfectly. So what we're going to need to do is use our trusty mallet and just gently kind of whack at the corners here. You can break this wood pretty easily on these braces, and you don't want to do that. So, more smaller taps is much better than a few hard ones. So then, once it's all kind of flat, we'll say, thank you, mallet, and then we'll wipe whatever is over here so that it'll dry mostly flat. That's our goal for that piece. It won't look too pretty, but it'll be good enough for our purposes. And then we will take our finger on this inside and run it along and try to capture as much of that glue as we can so that it doesn't stay on the model and it doesn't stain the window. So we'll pick up as much as we can in that piece, and then we'll check the other side, and we'll dabble it up on that side too, and we'll put on this other piece. You want to be a little bit speedy with this one, and I know from previous testing that this one just slides right on very nice and easily, and that is kind of the ideal place you want to be. And even though it slides on perfectly, we still want it to sit flush with the top of the model, and we'll just kind of wipe away whatever extra there was. Awesome. I love to get my fingers dirty, so that's the sign of a good job. Good job well done. And I am just yapping, aren't I? I think the camera angle shifted. Hopefully that's all right. And we'll do the same thing. Run a fingernail or something through this side. Capture glue there. And do the same thing on the opposite side. Capture glue here. Also, in the process of trying to capture that glue there, you also spread it a little bit, which is handy. And so notice how even though this one was much looser to get on, you can push these sides together and the glue, both glues will hold it together pretty well. And so, moving on to the last part is our base. So our base is looking pretty good. Let's get it in. So this is kind of two phases of gluing. It's engineered in such a way that there is some amount of wiggle room, usually, with these models. So notice how, due to me not being perfect in my gluing in the previous steps, this actually slides on with tension and will stay together, which is not intended, but the extra room with these measurements sometimes will allow it to. If it wiggles more, then you might need to, once you glue it down, kind of brace it together and like hold this onto something so it stays upright. And otherwise, I think for this one, we're not going to need to brace it against anything, so I'll let it stand, which is pretty cool. I was just incorrect enough with my measurements that it works out this way. And so same process with a little extra step at the end. So we're going to take our E6000, dab a little long, and I'm going to go for a little bit more this time. And I'm not going to do the bottom of this, because notice how I'm sliding this on, and if there's any glues on the bottom piece, it's just going to stick to the paper towel and kind of make a mess. So I'm not going to worry necessarily about that piece. I'll just glue the side. Same thing for the other side. Using wood glue here. This wood glue is almost out, so it's annoying to get out. Nice, a little bit more of a dab than usual. It's totally all right. And then we'll lay it in. I'm going to make sure it's facing out in the same direction as the text is facing as well. And then this one slides in really nicely. So set it down as far as it can go. What I like to do is I like to lean it over to each side to kind of spread out the glue a little bit. So right now I'm pushing this way with my fingers to get the E6000 side to spread out, and then I'm going to push to the other side to get the wood glue to spread out, and then I will return to center. And I will look on either side and see that this is pretty flush. It's pretty 90 degrees. And what I will do right after this is, after this has been a success, I will go around the back and add just a little bit extra wood glue on the back piece and the corners. Notice how we didn't put any glue in the corners or the shorter sides of any of our rectangular, slits. And that is something that I've kind of realized is totally all right with this model. A lot of the times, if we just try to add more glue on the sides, especially on the top piece, then it can just kind of get to be a lot unnecessarily, and you end up wiping so much glue away anyways. So I globbed a lot down just now, so I have a little bit of extra to clean up, but rub it around, and it's a lot like if you've ever done spreading like crown molding, or filling holes in your wall. The angle that you make with your finger also kind of determines kind of the shape of the wood glue as it dries, and you want it to be kind of smooth around the back, a lot like kind of molding and whatnot. These are it's like extra wood you're adding in, but in glue form. So in the end, it's going to kind of look like this, and I'm not going to touch it because it is in drying stage right now. So I'll leave it on this paper towel just to make it easy on myself, and it'll dry. And it's got a little extra glue on the back and the sides now, because that's all right, because face on, we want it to look more prettier prettier from the front. And that's it. You'll let it dry. The E6000, it takes some time, and also with the amount of wood glue that you've just probably added to your thing, it's probably going to want to dry for like at least 24 hours. Be 24 hours before I would want to play with it, at least. And that's it. It's completed, and at the end you'll have a full model. And so that is the tutorial. Part 3 is done. Bye.